have a wonderful panel this morning to talk about local issues. To kick off our season, we have our local elected officials. I'm going to turn the program over to Lorraine Walsh, our chair for the morning, and our moderator. Lorraine.
Thank you. Thanks. Welcome to the new season of the Local Summit presentations. Our first public meeting kicks off several months of presentations and discussions broadly focused on the multiple considerations taken into account when discussing the use of space within our community. For this conversation, we have invited the elected leaders of the 3 municipalities, Supervisor of the Town of Mamaroneck, Jaine, Elkind, Eney, Deputy Mayor of the Village of Mamaroneck, Nora, and Mayor of the Village of Larchmont, Sarah Bauer. Unfortunately, Mayor Sharon Torres is unable to attend because of a work conflict. Decisions regarding the use of space in our community raise questions regarding the broader vision for the community and take into account the many differing perspectives and needs of a dynamic community, including flooding, recreational needs, residential development, business enhancement, fiscal impacts, environmental concerns, parking for commercial enterprises, among many, many others. The decisions that are made can have a meaningful impact on how we interact with and live in our communities. They may also determine future outcomes, yet the process of how such envisioning and decision-making happens is often not well understood by members of the community. Much of this process has taken place utilizing comprehensive plans. Under New York State Town Law 272-A, a town may adopt a comprehensive plan to promote the health, safety, and general welfare of the people. A comprehensive plan is a written document presenting goals, objectives, and strategies that address community needs and guide the community's future development and decision-making. It's our intention that through this thoughtful conversation at this meeting, our elected officials can educate us on the considerations involved when making such decisions regarding the use of space within their respective boundaries. We would also like to learn of the coordination and collaboration among municipal leaders, as well as information regarding the various volunteer committees and boards that are involved and opportunities for engagement. Now, before we begin the question and answer part of our session, I'd like to do a broader introduction of our guests here today. We have, of course, the Supervisor of the Town of Mamaroneck, Jaine Eney. She's been the Supervisor of Mamaroneck since November of 2021.
December.
Elected in, what? You were elected in November of 2021.
Oh, okay. Good enough.
Sorry.
I became the supervisor.
Yeah, you became the supervisor at the beginning of 22. Prior to becoming supervisor, she served on the town board as a councilwoman from January 2012 through December 2021, serving as deputy supervisor for 5 years beginning in 2017. In her role as supervisor, Jaine also serves as chairperson of the board of Westchester Joint Waterworks and as co-commissioner with Sarah Bauer of the Larchmont Mamaroneck Joint Garbage Disposal Commission. Prior to joining the town board, she was the deputy mayor trustee of the Village of Larchmont. Before becoming an elected official, Jaine served the town of Mamaroneck as a member of the town's Board of Assessment Review for 17 years as chair for 14 of those. She has resided in the town of Mamaroneck since 1979, raised her son and daughter here, both graduates of the Mamaroneck Public School System. She earned a JD from Fordham University School of Law and a BA from Wellesley College, and she maintains a local law practice concentrating in residential and commercial real property transactions. That's a lot. Thank you for joining.
The older you get, the more you have to talk.
Mayor Sarah Bauer has been Larchmont's mayor since December of 2022 and served as a trustee from 2018 to 2022, the last 2 years as deputy mayor. A Westchester County native originally from Briarcliff Manor, Sarah moved to Larchmont after law school. She spent many years involved in the Larchmont community as a member of the Chatsworth PTA and the PTA Executive Committee, and as director and founding member of Preserve Larchmont. As a passionate supporter of Larchmont, Sarah convinced her parents and more recently her sister to relocate here. She's a practicing attorney and principal partner in the family law firm Zampino Law, LLP. And because she loves Larchmont so much and wasn't busy enough, she and her sister Anna opened a retail business in 2021 called Atelier Modern on the Post Road. Sarah graduated with a BA from Johns Hopkins and received her JD from Georgetown Law. She and her husband, Court, have 2 children, Sabrina, who's in college, and John, who's at MHS. And lastly, we have Deputy Mayor Nora Lucas of the Village of Mamaroneck. Nora is in her 4th term as a village trustee and is currently also the Deputy Mayor. She served on the village's Mamaroneck Affordable Condominium Corporation, on its Landmarks Advisory Committee and Flood Mitigation Advisory Committee, including work on the Army Corps Flood Mitigation Plan. She's researched and published articles on Mamaroneck history, submitted research on local sites including the Mamaroneck United Methodist Church, St. Thomas Church Complex, and Albert Wilson House for listing on the National Register of Historic Places. A lifelong Mamaroneck resident, known throughout the village for her extensive volunteer service, Nora now resides with her husband Tony and daughter Molly in Rhinebeck. She earned a BA from Manhattanville College in American Studies and an MA from Boston University in Preservation Studies, and is a professional architectural historian specializing in environmental review. So we have 3 incredibly accomplished women up here who are going to now move into the question and answer section. And to help launch this discussion, we'd like each of you to first share some basic information regarding your respective municipalities. We'll start with Supervisor Eney.
Hi, thank you, Lorraine. The unincorporated area of the town of Mamaroneck encompasses 5.7 square miles that are not part of either of the 2 villages. The town has approximately 12,850 residents in the unincorporated area, and the entire town, including the villages, is 32,000 residents. We have 44 miles of roads. We have a lot of recreational facilities. They have the Hommocks Park ice rink, the Hommocks pools, not the indoor portion, but the outdoor portion, Memorial Park, several conservation areas, including the Hommocks Park Conservation Area, and trails. And we have the Hommocks Field and recreational zones for the 2 clubs that are part of the town, and the Sheldrake Environmental Center.
Thank you. Mayor Bauer?
So the village of Larchmont is approximately 6,600 residents. We have 1 square mile and 21 miles of road. And within that area, we have 9 public parks, which we are very proud of. And we also own the Larchmont Reservoir, which is up in Sheldrake. It's village property, but it's actually located within the town of Mamaroneck in the city of New Rochelle.
Wonderful. Thank you. Deputy Mayor Lucas.
So, hi, thanks. So our population of the village of Mamaroneck is almost 20,000. We are about 6.7 total square miles, with 3 miles of that being land under water. We have 9 miles of coastline, and I think it's 45 miles of roads because our village engineer is doing a road study, so that's like a paving study. And we have 15 parks. Probably most of you know the park you know the best is the Harbor Island Park, which is our biggest park at 42 acres. But we have a lot of smaller parks and neighborhood parks, one of which Florence Park in Rhinebeck is something that just has been recently renovated and is really, it's great, so please check that out. And we also have a robust marine zone, which is guided by our LWRP, so we work very, very hard to make sure that we can maintain the coastal character of our community.
Thank you very much. So the first question is going to go, we'll start with Supervisor Eney. Aren't you happy? Each of your municipalities have or are currently working on comprehensive plans. Can you briefly discuss how these were or will be developed and the parties involved? How did you collect input? How did you ensure that participation was robust and representative of a variety of views?
First, I'm very proud. Here is our comprehensive plan, which we adopted earlier this year, and it can be found online on the town website. So the comprehensive plan process is a huge undertaking. The last time it was done in the town was in 1965. So we basically started from scratch. So the first thing we did was hire a consultant. We hired the Pace Land Use Law Center, Tiffany Zazula, because she did the style of comprehensive plan which we wanted to do, which was a broad plan that sets goals for the community and sort of a roadmap for the future, and based upon which we then are going to do an implementation plan to show how we are going to implement the broad goals. So after we hired the consultant, the next thing we did was selected a steering committee. And the steering committee was comprised of 8 people from the community. They ranged in age from 22 to 80, and they were experts in all different fields. We have one here, Nicole Olifanti, who works for Cure and housing. We had someone from recreation, a first responder, someone from the planning board, someone that was an environmental expert. And so these 8 people worked with the consultant and me to develop a public participation plan, because our plan was based sort of from the ground up on community response, and the community response informed the structure and nature of our plan. So we did a lot of preparation. We had, in order to get community input, we had 8 workshops, and those included ones at Washington Square, one at the high school. I think we had one at the fire department, one at the senior center, one at the rink, and these were, all the public was invited. And at each of the workshops, we had stations that people could go around, and there were specific questions, and they could put Post-it notes and do their answers. So it was very fun and user-friendly. In addition, we had pop-up events at all the town concerts, at the farmers market, and any other place where the public gathered, any other public events. We interviewed all the staff and representatives of the town. We did an online survey. And in order to get as much public input as possible, we had a vast public relations campaign, if you will, outreach campaign. We had emailing, e-newsletters. We were in the school newsletter. We did public announcements. At any speaking engagement that any of us were at, we announced this. We had flyers, banners at strategic locations. We had, posters in stores. We all had T-shirts, lawn signs, anything we could think of, and we were very, very happy with the robust public engagement. So after all that, Tiffany, our consultant, sort of from that did a framework, a draft framework, based on what she saw the needs that the different groups in the community outlined. And then from there, from that draft framework, it went back to the public again, and the town board and the steering committee, and a final draft plan was then devised, and we had another public hearing, and then the town board adopted it. So it was a very long procedure that took
And start to finish, how long was that?
a little over 2 years.
Yeah.
But I think it was really worth it. I'm very proud of the product that we came up with, and I really do think it's representative. And even at the end of the plan, we have an appendix with every comment that everybody made. So even though they might not have made it into the plan, they're all there for anybody
there's a
to
record,
see.
yeah.
So now the next task is, okay, we set these goals and these policies, and now what we have to do is, sort of put the rubber to the road and implement what we're going to do to achieve the goals.
And the implementation plan is put together mostly by the board with the help of some consultants
Well,
and
actually,
professionals.
Meredith, our town administrator, is doing it and she's going to do the initial framework, and then I'm sure there'll be many lengthy board discussions
Absolutely.
to fill in the meat. But, I am very proud and happy that we did this.
Great, thank you very much. Mayor Bauer, same question to you.
So one of our primary concerns over the years has been the health of our business district. And so, looking at it, the zoning really hasn't changed since the 1960s. Things have really stagnated. So we applied for a grant from the Department of State, their Smart Growth Grant, in hopes that it would enable us to do what we're referring to as the commercial area plan, but it's basically a comprehensive plan for our downtown. to really look at our zoning, to understand what changes can we make, what else do we need to do. We're looking at our infrastructure, resiliency, obviously climate change and being a community on the water is a huge concern. We're having more and more flooding issues than we had before. And you know, how affordable housing is another concern. How are all of these going to work together in order to enable us to ensure that our downtown is vibrant into the future? And so we're in the very initial phases of our plan, which former Mayor Walsh has quite graciously agreed to chair. So we put out a call for volunteers to serve on our task force, which will be sort of the driving force behind the downtown plan. We received an incredible response. I think it was maybe 40 or 50 people were interested in serving, and so we interviewed a significant number of those. We narrowed it down. We were looking for people with experience in commercial real estate, affordable housing, environmental issues. We have some of our planning board members on the committee as well, with the goal to get as many different points of views and perspectives. We have older residents, younger residents with children, to sort of drive this committee. We put out an RFP to hire a consultant, which we should hopefully be selecting this fall. So once we have the consultant on board and have, you know, everything on our path, we will, I'm sure, be setting up public hearings. We have that built into the agreement with the consultant in order to solicit feedback. We also anticipate that our committee members will have, you know, individual assignments and perhaps focus groups as well. So we haven't fleshed out how the public comment is going to happen, but it certainly is an important part of it, and we know that it's something that we're going to really require in order to make sure that this comprehensive plan really takes into account the needs and wants of our members of our community.
Thank you. I'm not sure if you covered it, but did you receive the grant?
Oh, yes, we received the grant.
Okay.
We were very excited. It was a very long process, but we received the grant.
Thank you. Nora?
So the village of Mamaroneck took longer than the town of Mamaroneck. So we had done a comprehensive plan in 1986, and then it was updated in 2012. And the general recommendation is that you update your comp plan every 5 years, and I think that's kind of hard to achieve. So in 2018, I guess 17, we, before I was on the board, there was a decision to update the comprehensive plan. A consultant was hired, and there was a lot of public engagement there were charrettes, there were public meetings, there was a lot of push into, you know, festivals, concerts, any village event. We had people come and answer questions, ask questions, and participate. And then we decided to do a moratorium about residential construction in the commercial zone. So the comp plan was paused. The moratorium took about 1.5 years, but that was a lot of studies, and it was a lot of neighborhood study and a lot of documentation about zoning in the district. And then we had the pandemic. So ultimately, we adopted the updated comp plan a year ago, in September of 2023. And I think that it expanded to be a chapter. There's a big chapter on sustainability and resiliency, which was the initial goal for the first update, but the pandemic really drove different kinds of factors. And so we actually redid the public interest component again, because we felt that it had been too long. It had been 3 years, and we needed to there were new residents. People were living different lives with different kinds of commuting. So we re-engaged, and one of the things we did was a survey. In addition to in-person communications, we did a survey. And so we ended up with 5 priorities, and it was flood protection, utilities and infrastructure, land use and development, business services, and housing affordability. So those were, now there are probably a list of 20 priorities, but those were the top 5 priorities. And we're trying to use this now to guide our decisions. And so we've thus far, we have strengthened some stormwater regulations, and we are looking at some zoning changes that are a result of this. I will also say that, we adopted this in September of 2023. Following January, we lost our village manager, sadly, who retired, and we've lost our assistant village manager, tragically. And so we're down a lot of key people. So right now, the focus of the board is to make sure we have a village manager who can staff the positions that are missing. So I would say that we haven't dug into the comp plan as much as we would like to, and I think that will be going forward once we have more staff who can help do this work. We also now have a planner, and it's very important to have a planner on staff. So we have both a full-time planner and we have a consulting planner. So I think progress will start to be made.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm going to start this time with Mayor Bauer. And the second question is, what are some of the most pressing needs or concerns that you see facing your municipality, either presently or in the very near future? Specifically, issues that were identified or might be included in your respective comprehensive plans. How are you preparing to address them?
Well, for us, I think we have two really critical issues at the moment. One is our downtown and keeping it vibrant, which we're addressing through the comprehensive plan. We'll see what comes out of that, what recommendations from the task force in terms of zoning changes, infrastructure, looking at the overall business district. In the village, we have two distinct sides to our village business district. We also have a significantly larger number of businesses than other municipalities that are our size. So keeping all of those businesses in business is a bit challenging. So looking at the boundaries, looking at our uses, all of those things are critical. But then outside of our comprehensive plan, the biggest issue that we're facing is climate change and flooding. And we are now having areas in the village flooding that had never flooded before. We're at the point where, in speaking with the engineers, there aren't basically, systems that have the capacity to manage the volume of water that we're seeing. So how do we manage what we have? And each particular area now that is facing more flooding than it had been before, and we know this is only going to increase, has different issues. And so looking at the resources that we have as a village and looking at these different areas, right, you're faced with not only how are we going to solve all of these different problems, but how do we prioritize how we're using our resources. You can't necessarily choose one neighborhood over another neighborhood. Are there easy fixes that we can implement? It is a massive undertaking, and we're really looking at the most effective and efficient ways to try to help these different areas that are facing flooding, but also the village as a whole, and how do we protect against climate change.
Thank you. Supervisor Eney.
I will echo, I think our top priority is flooding. We have a very old stormwater system that does not accommodate the capacity of water. So what we decided to do for the first time, with the help of a county grant, thank you, George. Poor George, every time I call him, I want more money. Yeah, oh, Steve too. I'm not proud. Anyway, so we have a very old stormwater system, and nobody really knew what was down there. We know that we identified 15 areas in the town that are particularly prone to flooding, but we were very concerned that if we fixed one area, it would have unintended consequences to another area because we had no idea what was really underground. It had never been studied. So we did the first ever comprehensive study of our stormwater system, which took a good 10, 11 months, and we just got the report back, and they consolidated the areas until I think it was 13 key areas with issues, and now the next step is to design projects to address each of these issues. That's the good news. We know that we have to do that. The bad news is without the soft costs, just the fixes are over $50 million, which is basically what our annual budget is for a year. So It is very costly. So in addition to the grant from the county, we got another grant from the federal government that will enable us to design some projects, but we'll never touch the cost. So George and Steve, I'll be back to you when we. And when you're in the federal government, I know you have like bigger. Anyway, so that is a big issue. The other issue about flooding is the Sheldrake River, which goes through the town. And that's a completely different issue because that's not within the town. It's not within our control. It cuts across many municipalities. So that's something that is going to require coordination with our sister municipalities because, for example, if we took the brook and widened it so the water would flow more quickly through there, we'll end up drowning the village of Mamaroneck. So it has to be coordinated so that we start all the way downstream and then work upstream, so that we like our sister municipalities.
We appreciate that.
Another big issue is infrastructure. That's something that's not really sexy and it's always aging and we have to fix it. And our biggest project right now is to put a roundabout at the end of the entrance to I-95 down on Madison Avenue. This area is particularly fraught. It's a 60-foot wide street, which makes it unsafe for pedestrians. There's flooding there. There's about 6 different streets that come in with all left turns. And if you stand there for, 10 minutes, you'll be horrified at all the near misses there are. So our engineers, we did that basically zero crash plan. And
Zero vision.
thank you. And they recommended a single lane roundabout there, and that would address air pollution because right now there's so much congestion, the cars are there idling, there would be no left turns. We would put water retention basins underneath because that's one of our flooding areas. There would be pedestrian, crosswalks and bike lanes. It's close to the train station. Could foster affordable housing and redevelopment in one area of the town that is very much in need of it. So we feel that building that will, redress a lot of our problems. The cost for that is $4.9 million, and everything costs a lot. We got $2.8 million from the federal government, and we're hoping for more grants to be able to complete the project. The other one is affordable housing. We're working on that. Thanks to George, we have $3 million from the county for site acquisition because it seems to be that the land acquisition is the biggest impediment to building the affordable housing because the land costs are so high. So we have a developer and we have money from the county, and that'll be news to follow when that all gets tightened up. And then the last thing is traffic safety. That's something that we work on all the time. We have a big safety studies done. We have plans for enhanced crosswalks. And the latest thing is we got a $1.2 million grant from the state, thank you, Steve, for a sidewalk along Colonial Avenue between Weaver Street and Murray, right along Murray Avenue School. That is a very congested street in a residential area. There's no sidewalks there, so when the weather's bad, kids are walking in the streets and it's snowing and, it's scary. So, that's, when you get the money from the state, we got the notice of the award in June. It'll probably be a year or two before we actually have the money and do the project, but at least it's something that's in the pipeline. So that's it.
Great. That's a lot going on.
It is.
Yeah.
And a lot of money. Nora.
Well, flooding. I mean, that's our biggest problem in the village of Mamaroneck. It's been a problem for a long time. We've been hoping for now 8 years to implement the Army Corps plan. It looks like we're close to implementing it. I think ultimately it may depend on the results of the November election, but with the help of our state and county partners, Steve and George, we have...
Do you feel like you got a target on your back?
We have we're working with the Army Corps, and the Army Corps is working with the DEC. So and with the help of the town, who has done the Waverly Avenue Bridge, that's taken something out of the Army Corps plan that's lowering the cost because inflation raised the cost. So we're working with the DEC and the Army Corps to, we've applied for grants to do some work in the confluence, to do some work in the Ward area avenue, to flood bench. So the Army Corps calls these betterments of their plan. So we're not actually changing their plan, we're improving their plan with their blessing. And I think that's a big part of our flood mitigation plan, but it really just mitigates, it doesn't stop flooding. We're in the same, I didn't want to use the word boat, but we're in the same situation. We have an antiquated, not only antiquated, but an inadequate flood infrastructure, stormwater infrastructure. So we have been studying flood-prone areas that in a patchwork way. And last night, at our board meeting, we authorized an RFP to go out. We have 2 studies that the state funded, and that covers Beaver Swamp Brook area and the Sheldrake area, the rivers, and we're looking to study the other areas and have somebody come and put together for us a comprehensive list of projects we need to do, and then we'll figure out how to fund them. Maybe we'll be calling Steve and George. But so in addition to the Army Corps plan, we're trying to figure out other things we can do, and also try and do some smaller projects that are something we can kind of cover the cost of ourselves. And we've implemented a couple of those especially in the area around Florence Park, which was a swamp. And one of the things that happened, we have 3 parks in the village of Mamaroneck that were created from swampland. We have Columbus Park, we have Florence Park, and we have most of Harbor Island Park. And that might have been a great idea 100 years ago, and we've enjoyed them, but they are areas that are now sponges. And so, with climate change and with the flooding that we're all experiencing that's more significant, we need to figure out ways of collecting water and sort of slowing down the impact so that we don't have the kinds of adverse impacts that we had during Ida. So flooding is, I think, our biggest priority in the village. The second is, in terms of public space, sidewalks and streets is pedestrian safety. And again, we've had a lot of help from the county and from the state. We had a tragedy in June near Mamaroneck Avenue School, and we've been able to make a lot of safety improvements more quickly because the county stepped up and just helped us. There's more to do, but we made some progress before school started, and we've also been a Vision Zero community for a couple of years. But what we've done is do a lot of walking assessments, but we haven't actually implemented projects yet. And so we're about to implement the first project, which is a sidewalk on Old Post Road, which goes from basically the Montessori school up to where McDonald's is, which is a huge walking route to school. And we're also looking at some improvements on Rockland Avenue, where it's a very dangerous path to school. So those are, it takes a long time to sort of get to the point where you've got the engineering and the planning done for that, but I think we're at the stage now where we're starting it, we're funding it, and we're going to make some progress there. So those are the 2 big issues.
Thank you. Nora, I'm going to stick with you for the third question. Using a recent, ongoing, or planned project as an example, can you explain how you developed a strategy or criteria for analyzing land use opportunities? And how do you balance the various interests and incorporate the views of local residents?
Well, one thing that we're doing is we've had the other 2 communities have worked with Fields for Kids. Fields for Kids has wanted to help us build a field for a long time, and we're working with Fields for Kids to do something in Harbor Island Park. But in order to do that, we really needed to it involves reorienting some of the fields in Harbor Island Park. And so we are embarking on a facility study for Harbor Island Park, which is sort of a master plan for the park that deals with better layouts for recreational facilities. Now that the county has completed the pier, we have some more space to work with. And also making those fields more resilient, because we close our fields a lot due to rain. And so that's, so we're really trying to take into consideration the recreational programs. Sometimes the schools use our fields. There's passive recreation. So Harbor Island Park is really the biggest park that we have, and we're trying to figure out how to best use it and take advantage of this generous offer from Fields for Kids. So I think that would be one example. Another example is we're trying to figure out what to do with our hunter lot. That's been very controversial. We had planned to use it and the 169 lot, the courthouse lot, as a place to consolidate office space, because we have office space all over the village. At some point that pivoted to having the hunter lot used for affordable housing, parking, and office space. At some point that pivoted to simply affordable housing without parking, and we're in the process now of trying to figure out how we can make sure that we have enough parking for the Emlyn, parking for the library, parking for Village Court, parking for village uses, parking for the residents who park there during flooding events, and also the downtown, because there are a lot of people who use that as a it's easy to park there and just walk down the hill. Not so easy to walk up the hill, but it's easy to walk down the hill. So that is, that's something that we're really looking at carefully and trying to make sure that it's hard to please everybody. I'm sure we won't please everybody, but that's what we're working on now. In fact, there's a meeting about that tonight.
Enjoy that. Sarah Bauer.
So I think a good example of a recent project where we solicited feedback was Flint Park. If anybody's been there, they can see the dramatic changes that have gone on. But that was quite a lot of planning went into that. It was a multi-year process in terms of speaking with the different sports leagues, speaking with the schools, working with our parks and trees, our environmental committee, sending out surveys on people's usage of the park, to really make sure that we were capturing all the different ways that the park is used, and making sure that we were taking into account the ways that it was used as we were considering renovating the park. And I think it's turned out beautifully. We're hopefully in the home stretch and should be completed with that by next year. In addition, we've done some other smaller parks. For example, Willow Park. We've just recently worked with Friends of Larchmont Parks, and again, because that's more of a neighborhood park, there was a lot of soliciting feedback from the neighbors, how they use the park, what they see, what they need, and again, it resulted in a little bit more playground equipment, refurbished basketball court, things like that. And we also do a lot of surveys. We put out a lot of surveys, particularly with respect to our parks, because that's the most widely used public property that we have. So we just recently sent out a survey on all of our different parks, how they're used, what people want to see in our parks. One thing that came out of it was people want more shade in our parks, so we've just created a new planting plan for Willow, which was approved last night, so we'll be adding trees there and looking at different ways that we can sort of, again, add more trees to our different parks and take other comments that we got from the survey into account. I also want to do one more plug for our newsletter, because that is how we most widely communicate with our residents, is through our newsletter. And so we are often, sort of advertising what's going on, but then also letting people know, in particular as we do our downtown commercial area plan, we'll be letting people know we're having public hearings, we're having these discussions, please come to meetings, please participate. So it is a critical way that we communicate with our residents to make sure that we are getting feedback from as many people as we can.
I have a follow-up for that.
Yes.
I know that many of our park renovations are done as a public-private partnership, either with a local neighborhood group or with the Friends of the Larchmont Parks, or individual donors even. does the village have a public policy regarding that relationship and how that works?
We do, and actually we just recently updated it after Flint Park. We realized going through that process, it was such a complicated process. There were so many moving parts because it was probably the biggest project that we've done. We realized that our public-private policy only dealt with the point at which the project gets approved. It didn't really deal with, communication, information flow, how things work between the partnership and between the private entity and the village after the project gets approved. And so we realized that there were gaps in that process, so we just recently updated it, revised it, and so now we have what I think is a better policy going forward for future projects.
Wonderful, thank you. Last question that I have, and then we'll turn it over.
talk about my park.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Lorraine.
Go ahead, you do that, and then
Thank
you
you.
get the last question first.
That's okay, I don't have to be first. Okay, so we also have a project with the fields, which is the Hommocks Fields, and they need to be refurbished at this point. We were approached by a group of parents, zealous parents, who want us to turf the fields because with grass fields, when it rains and there's storm events, the fields are often closed and they get rutted. And so they really want turf fields because they'll be open more often, they're perhaps more durable, and the playing surface is more even. However, there are many people who were not in favor of the use of turf fields because of possible injury and environmental concerns. So, and then we have our camps who need some natural fields for the summer because the turf fields just are too hot in the summer, and that's where the camp is located, and the fields are very important. So, and then Fields for Kids approached us, and they wanted to finance turf fields, but it was clear that they didn't want to finance anything unless there was at least one turf field. So what we thought to do was we came up with a design that would have one turf field and one natural field, and they would be sort of at an angle so that they were both regulation size fields. So the next step was an engineering study because that area is landfill, it's right on the sound, so that it gets flooded in the tides, and underneath there's a very large county drainage pipe, or there may even be two. So what we did was an engineering study to see if the subsurface soils and the field itself could actually accommodate turf, and we got the results of that study, and then what it led us to is we have to do another study, which we're about to embark on, and we have a meeting next week with Fields for Kids to see where we're going to go, but we seem to, have a lot of competing interests and competing ideas about what should be there. So stay tuned as things evolve.
Thank you. So for the last question, I'm going to abbreviate it just a little bit. But obviously, based on what you guys have discussed already here, it's clear that the three communities are really overlap and interlock and, work together and have similar issues, flooding among them. So I think everybody would be very interested to know, how do you interact with each other? Are there regular meetings? How do you interact with the school district? Because I think you all mentioned like the use of the fields and the parks for sports and for school. So how does that happen? And Jane, you can start.
Well, first of all, I really want to say that I'm very happy to say that the town and the two villages have a great working relationship. I think I talk to Sharon and Sarah multiple times every week, and it's nice to have colleagues in the sister municipalities that you can talk to. We don't always agree. Obviously, we all zealously cherish and protect our little fiefdom, our municipalities, but, we have a good working and talking relationship. And then, and the same with Chuck, the superintendent, Charles Sampson. I feel that I call him anytime that there's something, and he calls me, and so it's a good way that, fosters working together. And then we do have formal things that are formal venues for conversation. I mean, Westchester Joint Waterworks, we have the Sanitation Commission with the village, we have the TVS meetings, which are quarterly meetings between the 3 municipalities and the 2 school districts, and we share the library with the village, the senior center, the ambulance. So there's a lot of joint, facilities that we already share. And, as far as the higher, the other levels of government, which I think are critical too. I mean, I think we all run excellent municipalities, but we're all little municipalities, and some of these projects span municipalities or require greater funding, and our other levels of government are so incredibly responsive. And I think, I talk to Steve all the time, I talk to George, Shelley, I mean, they're always available, Catherine, and they're always able to facilitate when it's sort of an intermunicipal situation that requires a higher level government. So I think, right now, it's as optimal as it could be, given that we all, of course, look at from our perspectives. But I think,
Right.
I think we really do have good working relationships, and I think it benefits the communities and the residents.
Great, thanks. I assume you agree?
Yes, I do.
And you agree?
I do agree.
Okay.
And I want to give a shout out to, because we work, we have, Village of Mamaroneck has 2 school districts. And this year, we were lucky to be able to work with Rhinebeck again, and they allowed us to use their facilities during days where we couldn't hold camp at Harbor Island Park. And, that's one of the things that we don't have a big enough building.
Right.
And we had a lot of hot days and a lot of rainy days, and that's just another issue. I think the school districts have been very cooperative, and we try to be cooperative with them.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. We're going to open it up to questions from the audience. We have maybe time for, I don't know. It depends.
Any questions?
Hi. I was born and raised here, and I'm still here. But I'm confused. When I was a kid, it was my understanding that we had the Village of Mamaroneck, the Village of Larchmont, the unincorporated area, and that the town was really an umbrella over all 3 areas. But now as a grown-up, I'm seeing more that there's 3 distinct, and that the town is really just covering the unincorporated area.
Can I answer that? Okay, so the town does encompass the Village of Larchmont and half of the Village of Mamaroneck. So there are some services that are provided townwide, like recreation is a good example of that, even though the 2 municipalities, the villages have their own recreation departments. And there are some services that the town provides just for the unincorporated area, like police and fire, although there's mutual aid. So
Tennis courts.
I don't play tennis, but like the rink, the hockey rink, that's for everybody. My favorite facility. But so there are some services that the town provides townwide, and some services that the town provides only to the residents of the unincorporated area. So you weren't wrong when you were a kid.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
I just want to build on that. So what are the reasons that we maintain 3 separate governments, and why haven't they been consolidated?
That's a whole different topic, right?
Oh my God.
3-day conference.
Let's just say that there have been attempts over the years, but they've always fallen through. And I don't know. It's, George.
It requires state legislation
Yeah.
to do that.
And a vote.
Very complicated and fraught with statewide political issues. Steve can talk to that, so can Shelley. So it's not just, hey, let's get together and do it, because of the way the corporate structure is created by the state, we went villages and towns.
Thank you, George.
And I also think,
Sorry, I'm going to ask also if you could just give us your name when you...
Good morning, Michael Godfrey. Thank you very much for all the information you're providing. To this end, I have one question, which is the theme of this is basically that the cost of living in this community just keep going up and up and up. And we've heard all of the wonderful things that you have planned, but you don't have, you haven't said anything about how you're going to maintain or control the costs. And frankly, there is your words were spot on, Madam Supervisor, when you said that you all have your fiefdoms and you guard them very carefully. So my question for you is, there is very little resident involvement, even though you said when it comes to the finances, with respect to all the other areas, you have this welcoming approach to resident comments. And when you go to a budget meeting, residents get put on a 5-minute timer at budget time, even though there's no one else in the room. Also, there is a finance committee in the Village of Mamaroneck. There is a nominal one in the Village of Larchmont, and there isn't one at the town. There are projects that go on in each of your budgets. For example, like you said, at the reservoir, you have capital projects that you have, but there's no communication between the town when it schedules a capital project and the Village of Larchmont. There's no communication going across the border. What can you guys do to improve the communication and the coordination so that the taxpayers, who ultimately foots the bill on this every year, doesn't get a 4% increase from the town, a 2% increase from zero? And why can't we get to where George Latimer has brought us of 0% increases for several years?
I just want to jump in really quick before they answer that question and say I'm glad you asked that, because it's our ability to plug a program that we're going to have in the spring, which is entitled Where Do Your Taxes Go? So that is going to be an upcoming discussion just for the summit. So that's a plug for our summit program. I'll turn it back to you.
Which way you want to take that question?
At least, I mean, I think in the village, with respect to the budget, we try to be very sensitive and try to limit, the potential increases. We're very mindful of where every dollar goes. I referred to a couple of grants. A lot of the projects that we engage in are either through grants. We have over $3 million in grants that we're managing right now, which I think is quite extraordinary for such a small municipality. I also want to give a quick shout out to George for the $1 million for Flint Park. We really appreciate that, and I didn't do that earlier, and I'm sorry. And we also, sorry, I lost my got distracted by the grants.
That's a good thing to get distracted by.
No, but grant funding and donor funds, right? The majority of work that was done in Flint Park was done through grant money from the county, and also incredibly generous donors. So we don't go out and spend money without putting an incredible amount of thought into, is this an appropriate use of our taxpayer money? If you look at our general fund budget, it is extremely tight. We really generally come within 1% of the expenses that we've budgeted. We tend not to go over because, again, we're very careful, and we are very mindful that it's not our money. Well, it is our money since we live here, but that we're not, that we are spending our residents' money, and we want to do so wisely.
One more. Time for one more.
Hi. Good morning. My name is Joel Legren, longtime resident of the town and both villages. I'm also a member of the Lions Club. Before I make my comment, I would like to compliment the town. They published the comments on their proposal, those comments that were implemented and agreed, and those comments that were not implemented and not agreed. That's a sign of good government, and what I heard from all three of our speakers was that they presented contrary views to what their municipalities are doing, saying, well, other people felt this way or that way, but that is also a sign of good government. And the fact that you're here today confirms all of that. I have a tiny little corner of the town that I wanted to raise. There's a little building that almost everybody knows what it is, that little yellow building at the corner of Chatsworth Avenue and Myrtle, right by the train station, over the train tracks. And there are two ways to look at it. One is kind of sad. It has been sitting there for over 25 years, unused, vacant, and most people don't even know what's going on in there, and there's a good reason for that because it's almost nothing. And evidence of that is there's a letter on the window on Myrtle Avenue that is announcing changes in the parking rules along Myrtle Avenue dated September 2014. But the good news, on the other side of the building is a big sign about recycling and who's doing what where, and that's also quite useful. But that's two signs of the same building, and its history also reflects that. It was Blind Joe's newsstand and cigar store more than 25 years ago, and it's been vacant since then. The Lions Club has a great idea of sharing that space with the town. The Lions Club will clean it up, renovate it, and do lots of things. And with some cooperation from the town, this can go forward. And the town can use it, and the Lions can use it for its public service, including Vision Center for students and others. And once that's established, perhaps a hearing center for students and others. And other things can be done in that building. Also, the Lions can use that to collect and save. You've probably all seen these crazy little boxes. Put your glasses, your old glasses in here. They collect old glasses and use them to give to other people who need glasses. They can use the space for storage like that. And with whom in the town is very complicated. Where should I start at the town to get this discussion going?
We have had this discussion, and I'm happy to continue it offline. And but the town does use it for storage right now. But that doesn't mean we can't continue the discussion. But I don't even remember where we left off with you, Joel. But I think we wanted to. Sabrina, do you remember where we left off?
Shall I call you?
So why don't you give Supervisor Eney a phone call?
Shall I call you or Meredith?
Yeah, I
or Sue,
think we
or
did.
the building department
No,
or somebody
me.
else?
But I think we did ask, and Sabrina's right. The highway guys use it. I mean, it is in use by the town, so we would have to find another place for that use to accommodate this request, and I think that's where we came down.
Okay.
And I don't know that we're able to do that.
Thank you.
We don't have time for any more questions.
Can I make one plug?
You can make a quick plug, yes.
Thank you. I just want to remind everybody that tomorrow's the 23rd anniversary of the September 11th attacks, and at the town every year we have a tri-municipal, yet another cooperation commemoration of that day at 5 o'clock and in Memorial Park, which is across from Billy and Pete's. And this year we're dedicating a new memorial to the first responders who went down then and are now dying of 9/11 related illness. So I would really love it if as many people in the community could come out as possible. It's at 5 o'clock. I promise it'll be less than an hour. It's going to be a beautiful sunny day like it was then, and so we'd like to see as many people as possible to commemorate this.
Thank you.
I want to thank our panel. I want to thank Lorraine. I want to thank Steve Otis and George Latimer for being here too, and all the thanks that went to the two of you for all the things you've done for our combined communities as well. And thank all of you for coming. Our next meeting is going to be a week later than our normal schedule on September 13th. Because of the Jewish holiday, we're putting it off another week.
October 13th.
October, sorry. I forget where I am. October 13th, sorry. I had the wrong date? 15th, sorry. October 15th, that's the following Tuesday. That'll be the third Tuesday instead of the second Tuesday. We're going to talk about family engagement in the natural environment. In other words, how we use some of these spaces, these wonderful spaces you've heard about today, including the Marine Center, the Sheldrake Nature Center, and other places where we enjoy the environment of our community and why we live here. Thank you all for coming, and thank again the panel for their presentation.